If you're prepping for an upcoming fantasy hockey draft, whether it's this weekend or next weekend or sometime in between, this video is going to be your source of truth. At any point during the draft, if you have no idea who to take or you just want to take the best available player, this is what this video is specifically designed for. Hence the title, the best player in every single round, rounds 1 through 12. Again, I'm going to do rounds 1 through 12, guys. If I did 17, 18 rounds, this video would be insanely long. So I want to keep it at least to a consumable amount of time for you guys. So rounds 1 through 12, I'm going to give you a best available player or best option in that round, and then an honorable mention as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. One of my favorite videos that I do every single year on the channel. Let's get into it. Everything is going to be based off of ADP in terms of organizing who falls into what round, and you can't really go wrong with round 1, but I think there is a clear-cut option as the best pick available in this round, especially given his ADP, is Leon Draisaitl. Draisaitl has one of the best floors in the National Hockey League. He's had 110 points in 3 of his last 5 seasons. He's had over 50 goals twice. He's had a year where he managed to get over 60 power play points. He's dual eligible at center left wing. And the fact that you can get this guy outside of the top 3 this year is absolutely ridiculous to me. There are our consensus top 3 of McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, just based off the fact that these guys are elite volume shooters. But there is definitely a case, especially depending on league settings, where you could take Leon Draisaitl at 3 and it would pay dividends for you going forward. He should be the number 4 pick off the board every single time. I wouldn't argue even if you took him at 2 or 3 if this is your guy. Like I said, dual eligible, can hit over 50 goals consistently, has an insane power play point total, and really just the only downside to Draisaitl is his shot volume and peripherals. But outside of that, a true elite player in the league, and ADP 5 is ridiculous for this, guys. My honorable mention is Cale Makar at ADP 9. Very similar situation to where normally I would be taking Makar anywhere outside of that solidified top 6 of elite forwards that we talk about consistently on the channel. Even 7, I could make, an argument. You could go with Rantanen. You could go with somebody with a little bit more upside, like a Jack Hughes, for example. But Cale Makar at ADP 9 is ridiculous. If you can get him anywhere outside of 7, 8, and even pick 9, it's fantastic value because you have the gold standard number 1 defenseman off the board on your team, and you can still likely get to a high elite forward with your second pick. Speaking of guys with a ton of upside, Jack Hughes is the best pick available in round 2. For the plain, simple reason that whenever this guy is healthy playing hockey, he is a top 5 fantasy asset. If he plays 70 games this year, he will get over 100 points. If he plays 80 games this year, he could easily dip into the 110, 120 range. And the fact you can get this guy outside of the first round is absolutely insane to me. He does come with some risk, but keep that in mind. The biggest benefit to Jack Hughes is his shot volume on top of all of this. He's got a crazy upside in terms of his point total. He could easily eclipse that 40 goal mark, but the shot volume on top of that is just insane, guys. He could be well over 300 shots again this season, depending on how many games he plays. He's also dual eligible on top of that, so he doesn't jam you at the center position. He is by far the best available pick in round 2 for me. I was also considering Kirill Kaprizov, but the center left wing eligibility for Jack Hughes is just insane, along with the fact that, like I said, if he stays healthy, he will produce like a top 5 fantasy player this year. Roman Josi, ADP 23 is insane. I wouldn't even blame you if you took him at the turn to just snag an elite defenseman in like that 13, 14, 15 range. Again, getting him that late at the end of the second round just pays so much value because you're basically getting the second best defenseman an entire round later. He's just so good. He's so well-versed in terms of his peripherals, his floor, especially blocks. Now it's like always consistently around the 150 mark. His shot volume is just insane on top of that. He could easily get into the 280, 290 range. He's just such a good defenseman, guys, with such a great floor and so much upside, especially with all the talent now on Nashville. The best pick in round 3 is Jason Robertson. Anytime you can get a player that could hit over 100 points in a season outside of the first 2 rounds, you don't hesitate. You go and you grab that player immediately. J-Rob could easily score over 40 goals this year. Again, he could easily be around that 100-plus point mark, and he has a good enough floor to where he should sit around a point a game regardless. There's not many players outside of the first couple rounds that has this kind of upside. The really downside with J-Rob is we did see a bit of a drop-off in his shot volume over the last season, but again, it seemed like he had a little bit of an off year. I'm curious to see what a full year of him and Wyatt Johnson look like on the same line, but J-Rob is going to miss the start of camp and probably throughout the duration of camp, as he did have a slight off-season surgery that removed a cyst from his foot. So he's been, dealing with that over the last couple weeks. They just recently released that information. I'm not worried about it affecting his game whatsoever. It may take him a little bit longer to get up to speed in terms of, just starting hot out of the gate. But J-Rob is a fantastic option outside of the first 2 rounds with a ton of upside and a 40-goal floor, it seems like, every single year. Brayden Point is very similar. The really only difference between Point and J-Rob is the fact that Point, I don't think, has that 100-plus point ceiling. He's just so incredibly consistent within that 90 to 95 point range. Point has also had the 3rd most goals over anybody in the National Hockey League behind David Pastrnak and Austin Matthews over the course of the last 2 seasons. So 51 and then 46 the last year. Point is just a great, consistent player. I look to get him every single time, especially if you are at the turn in rounds 1 and 2 and you could pick up either an elite defenseman and an elite winger. You should be looking to fill your first center spot with a guy like Brayden Point, who's just so incredibly consistent on a year-to-year basis and can just get you a ton of points, 90-plus points, 45-plus goals every single season. He's an absolute stud and honestly was close to beating out J-Rob for the best pick in round 3. Very similar story with Tage Thompson is you could have an incredibly high upside player outside of the first 3 rounds. Like Tage could easily score over 40 goals this year, could easily have an elite shot volume again like we saw 2 years prior where he was over the 90-point mark, over the 40-goal mark, and had close to 300 shots. I can see the same thing happening again this year, especially because Buffalo's power play was just so bad last season. It's going to come around. There's just too much talent on this team. Tage is going to be an absolute stud this year. But again, comes with a little bit of risk. We don't exactly know just because of the sample size that he's produced at an elite level hasn't been the largest by any means. But Tage is still a fantastic option. And he has that center right wing eligibility, which will pay dividends for you in your drafts. You always want to look to be drafting dual eligible players. And then my honorable mention, very similar to Brayden Point, is Sebastian Aho, just an incredibly consistent goal scorer, scores 36 to 37 goals every single season. He's got a good shot volume. He's got a good point totals. He'll hover around a point a game. He's just a very, very safe player, and you want safe, consistent scorers in your leagues, guys. Love Aho, love Tage going into next season. Round 5, Tim Stützle could arguably have as much upside as a Tage Thompson or a Jason Robertson. I just don't think he has the goal upside that those 2 players do, but he could still be in that 90-plus point mark, and the fact that you're getting him at ADP 57 is absolutely absurd in my opinion. I'm looking to draft this guy in every single draft that I partake in. He's center left wing eligible. Again, that dual eligibility is so nice. His shot volume is on the lower end of the spectrum, but again, he does have a really high upside in terms of his point totals, and his floor is also insanely high because he gets you triple-digit hits every single season. I love Timmy going into this year. I hope the Sens really figure it out, especially on the power play, and if that's the case, Timmy is going to be the catalyst of that offense. And then honorable mention, Alexander Barkov. I was considering other people in this spot, but again, if for whatever reason Barkov does play over 70 games, he should be in that 85 to maybe even 90 point range. But again, he does struggle with some injury concerns, but he's just that good enough of a player to where I would continue to look to draft him in that ADP range of 49. But again, Timmy is such a great option in round 5. Same with Barkov. I think they're both high upside players with a little bit of risk associated to both of them. But again, look to draft Timmy in round 5 if he's available. Even before that, we're still zooming through forwards that have incredibly high upside, and this season, look no further than Timo Meier could be an absolute league winner for you guys. Left wing, right wing eligible. We saw last season him struggle immensely, especially with his first year kind of in New Jersey, getting accustomed to the offense. They recently switched coaches. He had an absolute heater of a second half last year. I think there's just so much upside still with this guy, given his floor and the fact that he could get you 300 shots and 150 hits. And then on top of that, he has the upside to score over 40 goals. I think it's possible he could even dip into the 45 goal range this year if he plays alongside Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, which is what we've been seeing in camp so far. They have shifted those players around, but again, Timo Meier could be an absolute stud for you this year. I'm looking to draft this guy every single single opportunity I can throughout drafts. He does seem to be trending upwards in terms of his ADP. So there are circumstances where this guy's getting reached on in like round 4 and 5 that we've noticed over the course of the last, couple mock drafts that we've done, and just seeing like his ADP kind of gradually come up over the last couple weeks. But fantastic player. I want everything to do with him this year. I'm back on that train. And then Mika Zibanejad, the fact that you can get this guy outside of the first 4 rounds is just insane. He's got a really, really good floor. Last season, again, I think Panarin just really took a little bit from his shot volume and his goal scoring upside, given the fact that, Panarin decided to shoot and like he had over 40 goals. So that took a little bit away from Zib. I don't know if I'm actually confident that that's going to continue with Panarin. We'll talk about him in tomorrow's video. But I love Zib in this range. Is anywhere around this ADP is just insane value for a guy like Zibanejad. Round 7, one of my favorite players in drafts this year, Matt Boldy. We did recently learn that he will be a week to week with a lower body injury, but John Hines actually just snubbed that out and said it's not a major injury for Boldy and he should be back by the end of camp. And they're anticipating he will be ready by season open, which is fantastic news because I think there is a legitimate chance that we see Matt Boldy become one of the stars in the National Hockey League this year. I think he has 40-40 upside, 40 goals, 40 assists, and could easily shoot around 270, 280 shots throughout the season. If he plays with Kirill Kaprizov, his point totals could go absolutely nuclear. He's just so talented of a player. He's got such great opportunity in front of him. I would find it very hard to believe that they keep him off the first line this year, especially the way that he's been so consistent with his goal scoring, his shot volume, his shots per 60, his shooting percentages, all like within 1 decimal point or within 1% of each other over the last 3 seasons. He's just so incredibly consistent, and I think he still has a ton of upside in his game. Honorable mention is Cole Caulfield, and a lot of people have been wondering like why we're so high on Cole Caulfield this year. We love Caulfield because of the fact that he can get you over 300 shots and still have an insane goal upside. He shot only 8.9% last year, the lowest out of every single player in the National Hockey League that eclipsed over 300 shots. Caulfield has a ton of upside because of his goal scoring talent and the fact that he is now shooting at a ridiculous rate, doubling essentially last season where he had only 158, which was only within 46 games. But the fact that he can get you over 300 shots, and I think he could dip into the 40 goal mark easily if he can stay healthy, is just an insane amount of upside for round 7. I wasn't finding a lot of D options within this range as well too. This range in particular of ADP was just like a lot of really underwhelming non-like upside related players. Kevin Fiala is just a very safe player. Gets you 70 points every year, gets you around 30 goals, has a good shot volume, good on the power play as well. Just a very safe pick, in my opinion, for Fiala. He's going to be power play 1, line 1 the entire year. So he's a very solid pick in round 8. And then Alex DeBrincat, if you count hits in your leagues, you could honestly take him over Fiala. I expect DeBrincat to go before Fiala as well, given the fact that he has that kind of hit total. But we did see that really drop off last year. So I was a little bit hesitant. I just felt like Fiala and DeBrincat are very similar. You can interchange the two of them. I just decided to go for Fiala and give him some love. Simply because the fact if you play in head-to-head leagues, Fiala will just continuously, season after season, go on these absolute monster heater streaks, like where he's like producing at well over a point a game just over the course of like 2-3 weeks, and you could just outright win you weeks because of how well he's playing hockey. He's such a streaky player, but at the same time incredibly consistent. I just like them both. Round 9, we saw the breakout of Alexis Lafreniere last season, and we're definitely back on him this year. We're projecting him for over 60 points, 65 to be exact, with 30 goals, 33 assists. He's going to be stapled to that second line with Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin, which you could argue is the first line going into next year. But again, left wing, right wing eligible, get you a ton of hit volume on top of that, a good enough shot volume. The real only downside to Lafreniere is the fact that he isn't going to be on that power play 1 spot. Lafreniere just has a really good floor. He's one of the better 5-on-5 players in the National Hockey League in terms of his production, and he's a really great pick outside of round 9, especially with that 100+ hit total. And then Drew Doughty, ADP 107, just a very, very safe defenseman. Power play 1, is going to get a ton of minutes, has had 50 points 3 consecutive seasons. Very safe, very great option. I'm looking to draft him as my D2, D3 in some circumstances. It depends on who's available, but it's just very dependent on where you take your defenseman in your drafts, and their ADP is reflective of that. But Doughty at ADP 107 would be a great pickup. Finally, giving some love to some defensemen, John Carlson, who honestly I would take before Drew Doughty in the previous round. At round 10 is insane value. He is so good both on the power play, both from a point production standpoint, has a good shot volume on top of that. He had a boatload of blocks last year, where he finished with 194 blocks, which is insane. Doesn't quite have the hit volume, but power play one is going to play a ton of minutes on top of that. I'm not worried about Jakob Chychrun taking a spot off power play one by any means. And then Juraj Slafkovsky, you've heard us talk about him a lot. He just took such a step last year, had an absolutely electric end to the season where he had 19 points in his last 20 games. He's got a crazy hit volume. He's got a good shot volume on top of that, and he's one of the highest blocking forwards in the National Hockey League. So his floor is insane. And if we see him stay on that top line with Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki for the entire season, he is going to see another jump in his point total. So again, a really, really good option in round 10. Jake Sanderson, another player you hear us talk a lot about. One of my breakout picks for this year, one of Mike's must-draft defensemen. He is going to be the power play 1D in Ottawa. I think their power play is going to get significantly better. I think Sanderson is going to take a huge step this year. Our projection, is very, very mediocre given the fact that it's a weighted average over the last couple seasons. So again, that's just based on what we've seen out of Sanderson up until this point. He's still a very, very young defenseman on top of that. I think he takes a step this year. He's going to play a ton of minutes. There's no more threats in terms of, Jakob Chychrun taking over that top power play. Thomas Chabot is consistently injured on a year-to-year basis, so I'm not really worried about him. Even if he does steal a little bit of that power play one time, I just can't see them giving it to Chabot right off the rip. I think Sanderson is their true number one defenseman on that team now, and he's going to be on that power play one. Great value in round 11. And then Jordan Kyrou, very safe player as well, could easily get 35 goals, 35 assists, could hover around the 70-plus point mark, has a really good shot volume on top of that. Not great peripherals, but again, center right wing eligibility. That will be really beneficial to your guys' drafts later on in round 11 especially. And the fact you can get him this late is kind of insane, so I'm looking to draft him in every single draft as well, depending on if I need a D or a forward in this range. I love both of these options. And then finally, guys, round 12. This is ADP 133 to 144, and we have Elias Lindholm, who has, in my opinion, been such a sneaky good pick in drafts that we're seeing on a regular basis. Typically, it's tough to get to this guy just because normally you're drafting an elite center and then finding good value with another elite center in these mid rounds, like Mika Zibanejad is a really good example. So it's tough to kind of get Lindholm in round 12. But if you are smart with the way that you draft and you leave spots open to fill out your centers later on in drafts, Elias Lindholm is one of the best picks that you can make. We believe he's got 70-point upside. He could be an absolute stud on that top power play, playing alongside David Pastrnak for the entire season. I can't see a situation where they don't play Pasta with Lindholm on that top line. There is a situation where, Pavel Zacha could potentially be a center for them and they bump Lindholm down to like a line with Marchand, for example. But I find it very hard to believe that that's going to happen. He's going to be line one. He's going to be power play one. He's going to play a ton of minutes. He's going to be their Bergeron light, and I really like him in this range if you can manage to fit him on your team. My honorable mention is Thomas Harley. He had a big breakout season last year where he finished with 47 points, 15 goals. He shot 10%. I don't expect that to happen again, but it's possible we see this guy dip into double-digit goals again next season. And the fact that he's shown that he could be a 50-point defenseman already in his career at the age of only 22, he's also going to see his average time on ice jump a ton because he's going to be stapled to Miro Heiskanen the entire season. I love that top pairing. I love Harley as a player, especially in this range of round 12. You're getting a D3, D4 with a lot of upside. And if something does happen, God forbid, to Miro Heiskanen, where he goes down with an injury for whatever reason, Harley could be that power play one defenseman in Dallas, which is a very, very good power play. I really like his shot volume as well. He should get you around 150 shots again, and he's got a really high block total as well. He finished with 135 last season and 65 hits. So again, a really, really good option with some upside in a guy with Thomas Harley in round 12. This is incredible value for both of these players. That will do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and comment down below on what you thought of my list so far, the best player in every single round. Tomorrow, we will have the worst players in every single round, so look forward to that video coming out soon. Hope you guys enjoy this type of video. I love doing videos like this. Always excited to hear your guys' thoughts. So leave a comment down below as to what you think. I will see you in the next one. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.